A week ago Tuesday, I was in Baker, Montana, started the day. In fact, started in Miles City, drove, of course, through the metropolis of Plevna, missed the Ismay turnoff, and headed all the way to Baker. And had a chance, starting at 9 a.m., to visit the MDU wind farm, the Diamond Willow operation. As I mentioned yesterday, literally you're standing there at that wind farm. You see oil wells pumping, wind turbines spinning, and antelope standing there in the distance. A few hours later, 11:30 a.m., I was at Dawson Community College talking with their leaders about their new corrosion technology program, equipping Montanans for the future. Only the third corrosion technology program in the nation, one in Texas, one in Kansas, and now one at Dawson Community College. And then at 4 p.m., I was in Sydney at the MDU coal-fired plant, and then they just added 19 megawatts of capacity with a new natural gas-fired generator. So literally in the course of a few hours in Montana, you can visit a wind farm, see oil wells pumping, see natural gas as well as coal-fired electrical production. Truly an example of all the above. And those were all part of the MDU portfolio. It's my pleasure to introduce to you this morning Dave Goodin, the current president and CEO of MDU Resources. Dave has also served as president and CEO of Cascade Natural Gas Corp., Great Plains Natural Gas Company, Intermountain Gas Company, and Montana Dakota Utilities Company. I'm excited to hear Dave discuss how MDU truly utilizes a variety of energy sources in their portfolio. I saw it firsthand last week. And how innovation, seems like it's a word we're hearing a lot the last couple of days, is bringing all these sources together in an economical fashion. Dave knows firsthand what it takes to provide Montana families with reliable and affordable energy. Please welcome Dave Goodin.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for that kind introduction, and we do appreciate you making a trek through some of our eastern Montana properties. Truly, we do subscribe to an all-of-the-above policy. I'd like to extend my welcome to everybody here today, and I know I'm in an unenviable spot when I think about I'm between you and lunch. So when you think about the questions at the end of this, think of the opportunities that you've got to delay lunch for all of your fellow attendees here. But I would open it up for some questions at the end of this. Hopefully you'll have a few, because I hope a few of my comments would spur some of maybe thoughts that you might have. So we'll see if we've got, okay. I'd like to talk about MDU Resources, make sure everybody understands a little bit about who we are, what we do. Senator, we appreciate that tee-up. We do a variety of things as MDU Resources Group, but primarily we are two things. One is we are an energy company, and secondly, we are an infrastructure company. So what does that all mean? And what are some of the brands, you might say, that might be local to you in Montana here? So I'd like to make sure we all understand some of the businesses that we are involved with that are part of our portfolio. One of those that are probably near and dear to those Eastern Third Montanans, we're both an electric and natural gas utility. We do that under the brand of Montana Dakota Utilities. We serve about 83,000 natural gas companies here from Billings or Laurel area to the Montana border with North Dakota. And we serve about 26,000 electric customers in parts of that same service territory. We're also in construction materials and contracting. And so when you see those bright white trucks with the orange lettering that say Knife River on it, Knife River Materials. We're actually in about 19 western states inclusive of Montana, but from pretty much I'll say the Mississippi River going west, inclusive of both Hawaii and Alaska, we sell materials, we build roads, we build bridges, we build that infrastructure that's so vital to America's transportation needs as well. We also do construction services for other utilities like Northwestern Energy. You heard from Bob Rowe. Bob is a key customer of ours from a company we call Rocky Mountain Contractors based in Helena, with also operations out of Kalispell in northwestern Montana. And then to complement our utility side, we also have a pipeline business called Williston Basin Interstate Pipeline, or Williston Basin Energy, and we're actually bring natural gas from that wellhead to the burner tip in your home or business, parts of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, as well as Wyoming. And then also we do some refining. You heard from Ryan Lance earlier today about the refinery business. We just entered that last year as another, I'll say, value-added component as part of MDU Resources. So now I'd like to advance to the next slide. What are we doing specifically here in Montana, just as a backdrop? A few things I'd like to mention. Senator, you mentioned about visiting our Lewis and Clark station. The 19 megawatts we've got up here, RICE stands for Reciprocating Internal Combustion Engine. It's some new natural gas generation that we've added right in the location at Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark's a station that's been around since 1958. It's coal-based, but we're complementing that coal here with natural gas. We've also added some environmental upgrades. That's mercury and air toxic rule. We've added about $16 million of investment to keep that environmentally in compliance from a coal-burning resource. Here in Billings, a few years back, we actually put in a landfill methane recovery project where we take actually and dig trenches out in the Billings landfill here. We collect natural gas through that decomposing trash. Then we process it into pipeline-grade natural gas, and we actually bring it to customers in our system. And this project alone last year, based on the consumption, or I'll say the throughput here, would have heated about 1,800 to 1,900 homes on an annualized basis, just with what we're recovering from the Billings landfill. We also, from that infrastructure, particularly with Knife River, we're out at the Bozeman Airport. You can see we do housing projects. We're actually improving the McLaren mining site that we do from an environmental perspective. And then Rocky Mountain Contractors help with some of the infrastructure upgrades throughout Montana. This is Montana specific to help deliver energy to your home or business more reliably. A couple of the things that we've done, in particular in eastern Montana, one of the things where the senator actually toured is home to North America's largest storage field from natural gas. And what do I mean by that? Well, natural gas can actually be stored in a variety of underground, I'll say, formations. This happens to be North America's largest storage field that we can then tap into on the coldest of winter days to bring natural gas to homes or businesses that are supplied between storage gas along with pipeline flowed gas. So what are the challenges that I see from an energy provider serving customers here in Montana? Well, clearly here's a few of those you've heard about from other panelists and other speakers, not only today, this morning, but also in prior, yesterday as well. And so this is probably a repeat to what you've heard already. But again, don't want to state the obvious here, but here are some of the things that we see relative to not only commodity prices, there's some global market and interaction here, and then also I'll call it regulatory uncertainty, in particular, I'll say the Clean Power Plan that we all know has been stayed, but there's still some uncertainty as what the outcome of that may or could be that could have an effect, certainly us as a provider of electricity. So challenges certainly do inspire opportunities. I want to touch on each of these as I think about we are very much a subscriber and wholeheartedly believe in an all-of-the-above energy policy. I know that can be a coined phrase, but for us, we actually live it day to day. And I'm going to touch on each of these aspects between coal, natural gas, and renewables in the form of both wind. And then what I see more as an emerging would be solar. And I'll talk a little bit about that, as it's not currently part of our energy portfolio, but as I look down the road, what is happening in the solar industry. Certainly we've got other things so far as how do we help manage that customer's bill. And certainly new technologies can maybe be neat to have or nice to haves, but how do they really, I'll say, result in not only providing more reliable service, but can they be very cost effective as it shows up in that customer's bill every 30 or so days. And then I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize natural gas. You heard this already this morning, that we really view natural gas as a very long-term, stable energy product that is really a nationwide, I'll call it a bonus due to all the completion and fracking technology enhancements that have been done over the last 10 years that have been, I'll say, really developed maybe primarily for oil, but it's also readily available for natural gas, and the really prolific nature to the various basins. Ryan Lance touched on it, the Utica, the Marcellus, the Haynesville in particular. I'll touch on that because we provide natural gas to quite a few homes and businesses across this 8 states that we serve. So let me touch on coal. We do believe coal is part of I'll say, a vital part of our energy electric portfolio. It is very much a baseline resource for us. We take seriously our obligation to serve customers on a 7x24 basis. And so when I think of coal, we've got some long-lived and assets that have been around for quite a long time. Heskett Station is actually in Bismarck, or north of Mandan in North Dakota. You can see that's been around for a number of years. Lewis and Clark, located right in Sydney, just south of Sydney. It's actually been in service since 1958, and it's still producing energy on a day in and day out basis. Very much a workhorse as part of our fleet. We all know the abundant supply. Heard the chairman earlier today talk about the billions of reserves that are within the Crow Agency. Well, certainly coal is very much an abundant supply, saying something we all here already know. And we also, because it's relatively inexpensive, it really helps provide some cost advantages for our customers. And so our position on coal, summed up, would be it's very much a reliable base load resource, providing electricity to our customers 365 days a year. When I think about our rates, give you an idea, this is actually after what you've read in the headlines. We've just completed an electric case here in Montana. This will be after the second phase of those rates are phased in. So this is actually fast forwarding into next year. But you can see we're actually below the national average, and certainly we rank 19th out of some 160 some reporting utilities from a cost perspective. So we think coal alone is helping keep those costs down to the consumers. Certainly, the panel before me talked about carbon capture and what can be done to reduce the carbon emissions from the coal fleet. Here's a couple examples of some projects that we are involved with that, again, are really in an R&D phase today. And as we think about, this will be a years after years of, I'll say, research before something, I believe, can be commercially viable to reduce that carbon stream to a level that's acceptable, you might say, from a regulatory perspective, but give you an idea of a couple of the projects that we're currently involved with. I want to touch on natural gas. We've heard about that a little bit already today. It is very abundant across the United States. We've heard about exports now that we produce some 75 to 80 BCF on a daily basis. Actually more, Ryan Lance talked about the flat supply curve. We very much subscribe to that. Natural gas, in our view, has got hundreds of years of supply in the US, and that's based on current technologies. When I entered the business, energy business, in 1983, which is a few years ago, we were actually coming off a period of time in the US where we had actually what was called curtailments of natural gas. In the late 70s, it was thought we were going to run out of natural gas, literally. We were not able to add new customers unless we retired an existing customer. We basically were held flat in the late 70s. Well, look what has happened 4 decades later from an abundant supply, primarily because of technology advancements in how we can actually drill for and then recover natural gas out of some of these tight shale formations across the US. That, along with that abundant supply, is really provided for the additions of natural gas across the nationwide electric fleet and then also in our fleet. Here's a couple examples. We've got those RICE units that I touched on earlier. And also we added a turbine, a simple cycle gas turbine at Mandan, North Dakota in August of 2014, where we continue to add generation to our fleet to meet that growing customer need from an energy perspective. But we're doing it primarily through natural gas as a base load energy resource that can be called upon as needed to serve those customers that expect to flip the switch and that the lights actually do come on. And again, because of the 900,000 customers from western Minnesota over to the Puget Sound of Washington, we actually serve and distribute natural gas to those homes and businesses, heating those homes or providing industrial service to those businesses that look for a low-cost energy source. So we're very bullish on natural gas as you think about it from an energy source. And I think as Americans, you heard about security earlier today. This is a homegrown resource that we produce here, that we have an abundant supply for, that can really provide some security from a perspective for America. I want to turn now to wind. So we subscribe to this all of the above. I've touched on coal a little bit, certainly natural gas. We think another element of this all the above, I'll say portfolio approach. Senator, I don't know if you had the opportunity, we probably for liability reasons didn't allow you to climb to the top of one of those towers. They're only about 262 feet in the air, and when you get on the top, people look about that big. But as you think about wind as a resource, I've got a couple stats here that I think are important to understand how the technology and innovation in the wind industry is also bringing down the cost of the energy production off wind farms. So here's a couple examples. These are rounded for kind of the benefit of the group here. But we put in wind in southeastern Montana back in 2007 and then again in 2009. And that was called Diamond Willow just south of Baker. What we expect and are seeing from that farm is about 6 cents per kilowatt hour that we produce off that farm. Now that farm had technology that was current at the day. They're about 1.5 megawatt units. And when we think about the 6 cents, doesn't sound too bad as you compare it to maybe what was available at that time. Fast forward then from 2009 to a wind farm that was brought online just last December in southwestern North Dakota, and that's this Thunder Spirit. Look what's happened in merely 7 years of time that's elapsed between energy production in 2009 and now energy production that we're seeing in 2016. We've essentially halved the energy costs coming off wind farms as an energy source to our customers. So what's driven this? Well, certainly technology. You heard about better fiber in the blades. We put larger units at the top of the 80-meter towers. We optimized from a site location. But think about that, and this is all in considering any federal or state tax incentives. So that's all baked in, that's all passed back to the customer, but we've almost halved energy production from wind. Now, that sounds great, and it is great, but let's look at that third bullet down there. It's still an intermittent source, folks. We all know that. It seems like the wind blows all the time. Here in the upper plains, it doesn't blow all the time. It blows a lot of the time, but again, our customers believe you flip the switch, it's there 24 hours a day, so it's still an intermittent resource. So what do we do with that? Well, we need to back it up with some firming resource, and that really then becomes, I'll say, primarily natural gas. Natural gas would be that resource that could be called upon in a relatively short notice to back up the wind. So as you think about this, wind is not the end-all, be-all, but I think it's part of a portfolio that helps provide energy needs to our customers. I want to turn a little bit to solar. Solar is something we track as an industry, we track as a business. We actually construct through some of those other MDU resource companies facilities more in the southwest United States. I recall, I saw Bob Rowe earlier today. We sat on a panel probably half a dozen years ago in Helena talking about solar at the time. And at the time, solar produced energy about 25 cents a kilowatt hour. This was in 2009, 2010 timeframe. At 25 cents a kilowatt hour, that was the cost of solar then. Okay, let's fast forward to today, not many years later, and you can see the costs that we are now producing off. I'll say these are utility scale, large scale. This isn't ones where you'd have on the top of your rooftop or your home or business. This would be large utility scale. But we've gone from essentially 25 cents a kilowatt hour to somewhere between 5 and 7 cents a kilowatt hour for solar. Now again, this is all in, considering all federal and state incentives or tax incentives that again likely would all get passed back to the consumer, which is appropriate. But the problem here again is that it's an intermittent resource. And so the challenge here is you still require that backup generation. So it can't be the end-all, be-all, but as we see technology change, in particular the southwest United States, where wind, I'll say solar is an excellent resource from an availability, it just becomes less so as you move up to the northern tier states, and in particular here in Montana. So certainly these challenges do inspire, I'll say, opportunities. When we think about the all-in generation resources, we take seriously as a company, how are we going to meet those customer needs 7 by 24? Coal is that baseload resource that we see that's kind of the workhorse of the fleet. We add to that natural gas that can be called upon as needed and supplement some of the more peaks and valleys and be a load shaper, a load follower. But we also see wind, as those costs keep coming down, we see that as the most likely next generation add to our fleet, coupling that with the natural gas. And then I think emerging as part of this, again, the U.S. Southwest is experiencing more solar adds today than probably have ever seen. I think that will start migrating more northward as we continue to see, again, its scale of economy in that business, and that the more that those units are produced, the more that are into the industry, the more the technology and innovation is created, and then the cost per unit keeps to come down over time. And again, natural gas is, I'll say, a really boon to North America's, the U.S.'s energy security. And when I think about natural gas, again, drilling technology there has really been the enhancement recovery mechanism that basins heretofore were not economical. They're very economical today. And so with that, I purposely tried to keep my comments relatively brief, knowing again between yourself and lunch, and we've got a number of minutes available for some Q&A, so I would hope that you'd have a question or two for me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I would hope that you have a question or two to start the group. Are there any questions? I'm not very good at jokes, so I'm not going to fill in with those. There's one over here. Okay? Not one over here?
You talked about collecting gas from the Billings landfill. What is the cost of that per million BTU?
Oh, the cost of that per million BTU, I'll say today is above market because of the nationwide oversupply and strong supply. But yet, actually, we are able to market some of that natural gas. It's actually not a regulated asset of ours as part of our natural gas system into our own customer base. We actually do some marketing of that in other markets that will pay a premium because it's a biogas type product. And so that helps to offset, I'll say, that capital investment. But it's above market today if you were just to go buy gas from a gas broker, gas marketer for some domestically produced natural gas. So, but again, there's actually some offsets because certain markets, and I'll say more to the West Coast, will pay very much a premium for that because that's how it's derived as something that would be naturally emitting into the atmosphere. Thank you.
Yes, Dave. Greg Rauschendorfer from Sydney, Montana, director of an electric co-op there. My question kind of refers to the last panel of research institutions, but I would like to present the question to you as well. As a future workforce, are there any tentacles that reach from the research institutions back into the high school level for inspirational tentacles that would inspire students to look at sciences and research? And how do you see that coupling with your future workforce?
So it's more of a workforce question from science, technology, engineering, math type perspective?
Yes, but just as a future workforce for MDU, and going back through the research institutions and hopefully linking with the high school level, and how can we do that?
I mean, it's a pretty broad question when you think about the businesses that we're in. There's quite a bit of technology, and I'll say science and engineering, whether it's designing bridges or whether it's designing the next power plant or transmission line facilities or even natural gas related type facilities. Personally, we have a variety of recruiting mechanisms so far as reaching into, I'll say, more at the high school level to help maybe make students aware of the opportunities in the energy industry that maybe do or do not get highlighted by high school counselors, and that's also a touch point that we have as well. But certainly we look to the communities that we're serving in, and we look for that as the first available type workforce, and anything we can do, whether it's at the high school level, That's probably the best place to guide folks. Once they get beyond that and they're already in a college curriculum or a VOTEC curriculum, then their paths get a little more established, you might say. But that's very much a starting point as we think about recruiting that future workforce of tomorrow. Thank you. Any other questions? Everybody's hungry. Okay. Is there one last call for any questions? Okay, hearing none, Senator, I'm going to turn this back to you. I appreciate the time that you've given me on the program today. Hopefully I've stimulated a few of your thoughts and given you an idea of those in the energy industry and the infrastructure industry, some of the challenges that we see, and also those things that we're doing to overcome those challenges. And so again, thank you, Senator.
Hey, Dave, thank you. I've got one question for you, actually. Solar a little bit, too, just for a second. You mentioned half a dozen years ago, you were with Bob Rowe on a panel talking about solar at 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's 5 to 7 cents. Just a question. We haven't talked solar that much. Where do you see that going? I mean, is that something that can scale? Because I hear a lot of questions about that. And if it's dropped from 25 to 5 to 7, what's the trend line look like to you there?
Yes, well, the trend line was very, very steep on the decline as more and more products got produced from a scale of economy perspective. But again, we're actually constructing facilities for other third parties in the U.S. Southwest, so we get a direct kind of view into that industry. I mean, we're not going to see another trend line like that. There's a point of diminishing returns, but I think the message there is the industry through scale has brought those costs down, and it's real that it's, again, 5 to 7 cents depending on the various state and federal credits or incentives that you have. But it's a real resource, but it's energy only. There isn't 7 by 24 service there, and we still need to complement that from a utility, some, I'll say, fossil fuel backed up generation. And so I think it's somewhat leveled out here as of late, and I think only time will tell if we can take the next step down. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Dave. Appreciate that. So I hope you appreciate, as I have, the fact we've got a team here that's running this place right on clock, where you can about set your watches to the minute on the time schedule. And if some of you have not been up here speaking, there's literally a shot clock right here that counts it down for everybody as we try to keep it and respect your time, keep this thing on schedule as you've got to plan other meetings. Anyway, we're about 4 minutes and 24 seconds early right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to be serving lunch. It'll be like yesterday. So lunch will be served here in a few minutes. And then just if you want lunch, stay at your seat till you get your plate, because that's the way they know to serve you. And then we'll have another speaker coming up here in about 20 minutes. So you have a little time here to have some conversation with your table. Look forward to a great afternoon.